The colony of Aurora Prime stretched across the jagged cliffs and metal spires, a testament to human endurance in a universe that often seemed hostile to their kind. It was not a planet of comfort or beauty. The sky was a dull gray, veined with streaks of pollution, and the air carried the faint metallic tang of industry. Yet, for all its harshness, humans had carved out a life here, forging homes, farms, and workshops from what others might call nothing. Among them, humans were not just survivors, they were inventors, builders, thinkers, and fighters. Ilara moved quietly through the crowded streets of the colony, her small satchel clinking softly with metal scraps and tools. People passed her by without a second glance, absorbed in their daily tasks or their whispered complaints about the latest troubles with the Xylar Empire. Ilara didn't mind. She was used to being invisible. For many in Aurora Prime, she was nothing more than the quiet engineer who tinkered in her workshop, making gadgets that never worked or served no purpose. They laughed at her, calling her creations useless. Even the children avoided her. "Why do you make things no one needs?" they asked, poking at her latest device with sticks and stones. Ilara would only smile, the corners of her mouth tight, and shrug. The truth was, she never made things for them. She made them for the future, for the day when her creations might be needed to save someone, or even the entire colony. She turned a corner and approached a narrow alley where the wreckage of an old battle lay hidden. Here, the remains of fallen Xylar warlords and their soldiers had been left behind by a recent skirmish. Human scavengers avoided this place, fearing leftover traps or the wrath of Xylar patrols. But Ilara did not fear. She saw opportunity in what others saw as danger. Carefully, she moved among the twisted metal and broken machinery. Her hands, calloused from years of work, picked through the scraps. Broken circuits, torn armor plates, and shards of strange alloys, all could be useful. But her eyes were drawn to something more extraordinary. The remains of a Xylar warlord, the last in a line of the Empire's feared leaders. Even in death, the creature's form exuded strength, its armor fused with strange biomechanical enhancements that humans had only begun to study. Ilara knelt beside the warlord's spine, the central column of its power. The segments gleamed faintly, almost as if they still pulsed with energy. Humans had never been able to manipulate Xylar biology so directly, yet she understood the principle. The spine had been the core of the warlord's strength and coordination, allowing him to move with terrifying precision. She carefully extracted it, making sure not to damage a single segment. She packed it into her satchel with reverent care and began the long walk back to her workshop. The streets were bustling now with merchants and laborers, but no one noticed her. She passed children playing with crude robots, young engineers arguing over plans, and adults burdened with the weight of survival. All of them thought of her as the quiet woman who made useless tools. None of them suspected that she carried the seed of something far greater, something that could change the balance between humans and Xylars forever. Her workshop was hidden at the edge of the colony, a small shack reinforced with metal plates, wires snaking across every surface, and shelves filled with half-finished gadgets and strange devices. The place smelled of burnt circuits, oil, and the faint tang of alien alloys. Here, Ilara could work without interruption, free from the mocking laughter of her neighbors. She set the warlord's spine carefully on her workbench, her hands brushing against it as if it were alive. Then she began her work, assembling her new invention with meticulous precision. Each piece of scrap metal, each circuit, each small gear was positioned exactly as she envisioned. She combined the warlord's spine with her own technology. Stabilizers, energy conduits, and tools that could manipulate matter in small but precise ways. Hours passed, and the sun dipped behind the metallic horizon. Ilara barely noticed the time. She was focused entirely on the task at hand. Even as sparks flew from welding and energy hums filled the workshop, she worked steadily, guided by a vision that no one else could understand. Outside, the colony continued its usual rhythm. People moved through their days, tending farms, repairing vehicles, and preparing for the next patrols from the Xylar Empire. Some of them glanced at the horizon nervously, aware that danger was never far away. But within her workshop, Ilara was creating something new, something human, something that could outthink the Empire itself. By the end of the night, she had finished. The device before her looked unremarkable to an outsider. A tool. Yes, but nothing flashy or menacing. It had a small, polished frame, jointed segments connected by the xylar spine, and multiple appendages that could extend or retract. It could grasp, lift, mend, and even subtly manipulate energy flows. To the humans outside, it might have seemed a simple, harmless gadget. Ilara activated it. The spine hummed faintly, alive with latent energy. The tool responded instantly, extending and retracting its segments, adjusting to her commands with surprising intelligence. Her lips curved into a smile. She had done it. She had taken what others thought impossible, the heart of a Xylar warlord, and fused it with human ingenuity to create a tool that was not only functional, but extraordinary. The next day, she brought it to the colony square. She demonstrated its minor functions, repairing a broken water pump, adjusting a misaligned solar panel, even delicately handling small alien artifacts recovered from past battles. The crowd gathered. Curious, they murmured among themselves, waiting for the inevitable failure. But nothing went wrong. The tool worked flawlessly. Yet the humans still called it a toy, a useless tool. In jest, Ilara ignored the laughter. She knew the truth. This was no toy. It was a symbol of what humans could do when they used their minds, when they combined courage with creativity. The tool could not just repair machinery. It could outthink, adapt, and even defend. But she would reveal that power only when it was truly needed. As the sun set, Ilara returned to her workshop, carrying the tool with her. She placed it carefully on a charging station and sat back, watching the hum of energy flow through it. Her mind was already racing ahead, imagining the possibilities, the challenges that might come, and the ways she could help her colony survive in a galaxy ruled by beings far stronger than humans. She thought of the Xylar warlord whose spine now powered her creation. Once, he had been a symbol of fear and domination. Now, through human skill and determination, that same power could become a force for life, for hope, and for resilience. Ilara allowed herself a quiet moment of pride. She had taken what others called useless and transformed it into something extraordinary. In the colony, humans went to sleep unaware that the balance of power might be quietly shifting. And somewhere in the dark expanse of space, scouts from the Xylar Empire were beginning to notice something unusual. The humans of Aurora Prime were not just surviving. They were learning, adapting, and innovating in ways no one had expected. Ilara knew this was only the beginning. Her work had just started. And when the time came, when the Xylars returned to test the colony once more, she would be ready, not with brute force or weapons, but with something far more dangerous to an empire built on fear: human ingenuity, courage, and the will to turn even the most impossible challenge into triumph. The quiet engineer who had once been mocked as useless smiled to herself. They would see. They would all see. And with that, she returned to her workbench, already planning the next tool, the next invention, the next step in proving that humanity, though small and fragile, could bend the universe itself to its ingenuity. Days passed in Aurora Prime, and the colony continued its routine under the dull gray skies. Children played among the metal scraps, farmers repaired the hydroponic fields, and workers fixed the colony's aging machinery. But something had changed. People spoke in hushed tones about Ilara and her tool, the little device she had brought from her hidden workshop. Most still laughed behind her back, calling it useless, but some watched quietly, curiosity mixing with unease. Ilara herself did not seek attention. She remained in her workshop, tirelessly improving her invention. She had realized that the tool's power went far beyond repairing pumps or adjusting panels. It had a precision that no human engineer could match, and the ability to interact with alien technology in ways no one had imagined. She experimented daily, learning the limits of the Warlord's spine and how to harness it without overloading the device. One evening, as the orange glow of Aurora Prime's twin moons bathed the colony, a sudden tremor shook the ground. People ran from their homes, startled, as a distant hum, unlike any natural sound, reached their ears. The Xylar Empire was near. Their scouts often flew silently above the colony, searching for weaknesses, for signs that the humans might be organizing resistance. This time, the hum was different. It was heavier, stronger, almost deliberate. Alara stood at her workshop door, watching the horizon. Her instincts told her this was not a casual patrol. She felt a familiar surge of determination. The useless tool had yet to prove its true potential, and now it would have the chance. She picked up the device, its segments glinting in the moonlight, and began walking toward the colony square, where the residents had gathered in confusion. When she arrived, murmurs filled the air. Humans looked toward the sky, shielding their eyes as a scout ship descended. It was sleek, black, and angular. A machine designed for speed and intimidation. The Xylar had not yet attacked in force, but scouts alone could destroy buildings or abduct people if given the chance. The colony was vulnerable. Alara stepped forward, holding the tool firmly. "Stand back," she called, though her voice trembled slightly. The device responded instantly, its segments moving with precision, forming a protective lattice around her hands. People stared, unsure of what she planned to do. The Xylar ship hovered, scanning the colony. Then, with sudden speed, a pod detached and descended toward the square. Inside were Xylar warriors, their armor shining faintly in the dim light. The humans froze. Even seasoned colonists, trained to fight, felt a surge of fear. But Alara did not hesitate. She activated the tool fully. The spine inside it pulsed, sending vibrations through the device. The appendages extended, each one capable of independent movement. And she guided them with a series of gestures and small controls she had devised. The tool moved like a living thing, reacting faster than she could fully anticipate, creating barriers between the Xylars and the humans. The first warrior leapt forward, a weapon glowing in his hand. Alara directed the tool, and a segmented arm swung with precision, knocking the weapon aside without harming the warrior. Her heart raced. The tool's strength was in control and adaptability, not brute force. The Xylars had always relied on their raw power. They underestimated humans who could think and adapt. Another warrior charged toward a group of children hiding behind a broken transport vehicle. The tool extended long, flexible segments that lifted debris and created a temporary shield. Pushing the warrior back, gasps and murmurs spread through the crowd. They had called it a useless tool, but now it was clear that it was far more than that. Alara focused, guiding the device with a combination of intuition and experience. It analyzed the Xylar movements and anticipated their attacks, using their own momentum against them. One warrior attempted a strike with blinding speed. The tool's appendages moved like liquid, redirecting his attack harmlessly into the ground. Another attempted to flank her, but the device extended a segment with precision, catching him off balance and forcing him to retreat. Humans began to cheer quietly, their fear slowly giving way to astonishment. They had witnessed the power of ingenuity, the ability of a human mind to outthink what brute strength alone could not overcome. Even the scouts in the ship paused, their sensors detecting something unexpected. A device powered by the very essence of their own warlord's strength, now under human command. Alara knew she could not rely on intimidation alone. The Xylars were disciplined, strategic, and dangerous. She needed to use the tool to turn the tide, not just defend passively. Slowly, she guided it toward the warriors, carefully striking weapons aside, creating barriers, and using the energy stored in the warlord's spine to disrupt their systems. The battle, though brief, was tense. The Xylars, expecting an easy raid, were confused by the humans' coordination and the tool's unpredictable movements. One by one, the warriors realized they could not rely on their raw strength alone. They had underestimated Alara, and more importantly, they had underestimated humanity itself. When the last warrior retreated back to the pod, the humans erupted in cheers. They crowded around Alara, their faces alight with awe and disbelief. She lowered the tool, breathing heavily. For the first time, the colonists saw her not as a quiet engineer with strange gadgets, but as a protector, someone whose mind and skill had defended them when brute force could not. The tool, still humming faintly, retracted its segments and returned to a compact form. Alara touched it gently. "It's just the beginning," she whispered to herself. The real test was not over. The Xylars would return, stronger. And now they knew that humans were capable of far more than they had imagined. The colony square slowly emptied, people returning to their homes, still talking in excited whispers. Alara remained, cleaning the tool and checking every connection, every segment. She knew she had only scratched the surface of what was possible. The spine of the Warlord held secrets, knowledge embedded in its biomechanical structure. And she intended to learn all of it. That night, she stayed awake, sketching new designs and imagining improvements. The tool could adapt, repair, and defend. But what if it could also assist in exploration, in learning, in pushing the limits of what humans could achieve? She smiled, feeling the familiar thrill of discovery. Fear had been replaced by determination. Mockery replaced by potential. Outside, the stars twinkled coldly in the night sky. Somewhere among them, Xylar patrols reported back to their commanders, unaware of the full extent of what humans had accomplished. Aurora Prime had survived a test that many believed impossible. And it was all because one underestimated engineer had refused to be silenced, refused to be mocked, and had dared to turn what was called useless into something extraordinary. By dawn, the colony was buzzing with renewed energy. Humans repaired what had been damaged, shared stories of what they had witnessed, and quietly began to talk about possibilities for the future. Alara returned to her workshop, already planning enhancements, aware that each improvement would bring new challenges, but also new triumphs. She had learned something crucial that day. Humans were not just survivors. They were thinkers, adapters, and innovators. Strength alone did not define them. Ingenuity, courage, and the will to act when others hesitated, that was the real power of humanity. The useless tool was no longer useless. It was proof, a symbol, and a warning. Never underestimate what humans could do when their minds and hearts worked together. And as Alara looked at the quiet device resting on her workbench, she realized that this was only the beginning of a much larger story. The Xylars had been shown the first signs of human potential, but they had yet to see the full scope of what she and the humans of Aurora Prime could achieve. In the days that followed, she continued her work, experimenting, learning, and perfecting. Each day, the tool became more refined, more capable, and more intelligent. And each day, the humans around her began to see what she had always known, that the greatest weapon humanity possessed was not in strength, numbers, or weapons, but in mind, courage, and creativity. Alara paused for a moment, glancing out at the colony. She could feel the quiet shift in the air, the change in how people looked at her, at each other, and at what they could achieve together. She smiled faintly, her heart steady with determination. The next challenge would come, surely, but now she was ready. The humans of Aurora Prime were ready, and with that thought, she returned to her workshop, placing the tool back on its stand, and began planning the next step. If the Xylars returned, she would be ready not just to defend, but to show them the full potential of human ingenuity. Days passed since the Xylar scout ship had retreated, and the colony of Aurora Prime tried to settle back into routine, but Alara knew better than to trust in calm. The Xylars were patient, cunning, and relentless. Their scouts had observed, learned, and surely reported back. The humans of the colony might have survived the first encounter, but Alara understood that survival alone was not enough. They had to prepare for what was coming. Inside her workshop, she worked tirelessly. The useless tool had proven itself, but now it needed enhancements. She studied the Warlord's spine, analyzing the biomechanical signals that pulsed faintly through it. Each segment carried data that seemed almost alive, a record of motion, coordination, and energy that the Xylars had honed over centuries. Alara's fingers danced over the control panel, making tiny adjustments to the tool's appendages, strengthening its ability to manipulate, adapt, and anticipate threats. She experimented with combinations of human ingenuity and Xylar technology, integrating small sensors that allowed the tool to perceive not only movement, but intent. The more she worked, the more she realized the tool was not just a device, it was almost a partner, a reflection of her own mind, capable of responding in ways she could barely predict. Outside, the colonists noticed changes too. Repairs that once took hours were now completed in minutes with the tool's assistance. Broken equipment that had been abandoned for months was restored, stronger and more efficient than before. People began to murmur among themselves, a mixture of curiosity and awe, realizing that Alara's invention could transform the entire colony. One evening, as she tested a new function that allowed the tool to interface with multiple systems at once, a loud alarm blared from the colony's perimeter. Human guards scrambled to their posts, shouting reports into comms devices. Alara's heart quickened. This was no drill. Outside, the sky was filled with the shadow of a Xylar assault fleet, larger than anything she had ever seen. Ships hovered above, their dark forms blotting out the dim light of Aurora Prime's moons. The humans panicked, fear rippling through the colony like a storm. Even the bravest soldiers knew that the Xylar's weapons could tear through their structures in moments. Alara moved quickly. She grabbed the tool, feeling the familiar hum of energy from the Warlord's spine. It responded immediately, segments extending and rearranging themselves into a defensive configuration. She ran toward the colony square, where the civilians had gathered, shouting instructions and calming them as best she could. The first wave of Xylar soldiers descended in sleek pods. They were larger and better armored than the scouts from before, carrying advanced energy weapons designed to incapacitate with precision. The humans froze, but Alara did not hesitate. She activated the tool fully, sending out a series of protective barriers that absorbed the initial blasts. Sparks flew as energy shields flared, and the colonists stared in disbelief. The tool moved as if it had a mind of its own, extending long appendages to deflect weapons, redirect energy, and gently push civilians out of harm's way. Its movements were precise, flowing like water, yet firm and unyielding. Alara guided it with careful gestures, but it also anticipated threats, responding faster than any human could. One Xylar warrior attempted to attack her directly. The tool's segments reacted instantly, intercepting the strike and redirecting the warrior's momentum harmlessly to the side. Another soldier tried to flank the humans, but the device moved strategically, cutting off his path and forcing him to retreat. Each movement showcased the combination of human strategy and Xylar technology, proof that ingenuity could rival raw strength. The colonists watched, stunned. The device they had once mocked was now their shield, their protector, and the symbol of human adaptability. Murmurs of admiration spread among the crowd, mixed with shouts of encouragement. "Alara, keep going," one soldier shouted. "We're with you." Encouraged, Alara pushed the tool further. It began to interact with the colony's automated systems, opening gates, rerouting power to emergency defenses, and even activating some dormant experimental drones she had been working on. Together, the tool and the human systems formed a coordinated network, moving and responding as one. The Xylars were confused, struggling to anticipate the humans' actions. One pod descended directly above the colony square, releasing a squadron of Xylar mechs. These towering machines were designed for destruction, but the tool adapted quickly. Segments extended like whips, grappling the legs of the mechs, redirecting their strikes, and even pulling energy from the pods to disrupt their systems. Alara guided it with precision, coordinating every movement with the humans nearby, who had begun to fight alongside her. The tide began to turn. What had started as an overwhelming assault now became a battle of adaptability and strategy. The Xylars, powerful and fearsome, realized they were facing something unexpected. Humans who could think faster, respond better, and use ingenuity to neutralize threats that raw power alone could not overcome. Ilara felt a surge of pride, but did not allow herself to pause. She could see that the Xylars were regrouping, preparing for another strike. She needed a plan, something that would force them to retreat. Drawing on everything she had learned, she instructed the tool to engage in a coordinated sequence, blocking attacks, repairing structures, and subtly interfering with the Xylar systems without causing harm to the humans. The device moved like a living entity, weaving through the battlefield, precise and fluid. Its energy pulses created temporary shields, redirected weapon fire, and even manipulated small structural elements to block attacks. The Xylars were forced back, unable to penetrate the defenses, their coordinated strikes failing against the combination of human strategy and the tool's adaptability. The colonists, inspired by Ilara's courage and the tool's brilliance, began to fight with renewed determination. They used improvised weapons, clever traps, and the colony's terrain to their advantage, following the lead of the tool. Fear gave way to hope, and hope gave way to courage. Humans who had once hidden in fear now moved with purpose, defending their home and proving their worth. The final wave of Xylar mechs attempted to overwhelm the defenses, but Ilara had anticipated this. She directed the tool to create a coordinated network of energy pulses that disrupted the mech systems, forcing them to stumble and retreat. The Xylar soldiers realized they could not break through. Their confidence shattered, and they began to withdraw, retreating to their pods and ships. When the last enemy craft departed, the colony erupted in cheers. People ran toward Ilara, hugging her, praising her, and thanking her for her bravery. She lowered the tool, exhausted but triumphant. The useless tool had not only defended the colony, it had saved lives, inspired courage, and proven that humans could achieve greatness through ingenuity and determination. For the first time, the colonists saw Ilara not as a quiet engineer with strange ideas, but as a visionary. Her creation, once mocked, was now a symbol of human potential. It represented the ability to take what others dismissed as useless and turn it into something extraordinary. That night, the colony gathered to celebrate their survival. Ilara quietly observed from her workshop, her mind already racing ahead. The tool had proven itself in battle, but there was still more to learn. The Xylar Empire would return, stronger and smarter, and she would need to ensure that the humans of Aurora Prime were ready. She studied the tool, noting areas for improvement, considering new functions and enhancements. Each segment, each pulse of energy, each adaptive movement could be refined. She imagined expanding its abilities, teaching it to work with other devices, and even exploring possibilities that went beyond defense. Ilara knew the truth. The humans of Aurora Prime were capable of far more than anyone had believed. They could not rely on fear or strength alone. Their advantage lay in creativity, courage, and the ability to adapt. The tool was proof, a tangible symbol of what humans could achieve when they combined their minds and their will to survive. As she looked out over the colony, she realized that the battle had changed everything. Humans would no longer see themselves as weak or powerless. They had faced a superior enemy and emerged victorious, not through strength alone, but through intelligence and ingenuity. Ilara allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. The tool rested on its stand, humming faintly, its segments still alive with the biomechanical energy of the Warlord's spine. It had proven its worth, but it was also a reminder of the potential still untapped. Humanity had only just begun to unlock the possibilities that lay within their reach. The stars above shone cold and distant. But for the first time, Ilara felt a spark of hope. The Xylars had underestimated humans, and now they would have to reconsider. Aurora Prime was no longer just a colony. It was a testament to human ingenuity, resilience, and courage. And at the center of it all stood Ilara, the quiet engineer, whose ideas had turned what was once called useless into something capable of changing the course of history. She returned to her workshop, already planning the next enhancements. The Xylar Empire would come again, but next time, the humans would be ready. The tool, her creation, and her people would stand together, proving that intelligence, courage, and determination were the most formidable weapons of all. And as she worked late into the night, her mind alive with possibilities, Ilara knew one thing for certain. Humanity was not just surviving. Humanity was learning, adapting, and beginning to thrive. And no empire, no matter how powerful, could take that away. The nights on Aurora Prime were quiet, but tense. Though the Xylar forces had retreated, their presence lingered like a shadow over the colony. Scouts had reported movement in distant space, and Ilara knew it was only a matter of time before the Xylars returned, this time with greater numbers and more advanced strategies. She spent every waking hour in her workshop, refining the tool, testing its capabilities, and preparing for the day when it would face the full force of the Empire. Ilara's work was meticulous. She studied the Warlord's spine, extracting patterns and understanding how it adapted to every movement. Each modification she made allowed the tool to anticipate threats, react instantly, and coordinate with human allies. She added extensions that could repair damaged structures faster than any human team, devices that could subtly disrupt enemy energy weapons, and sensors that read even the faintest disturbances in the environment. Every improvement made the tool smarter, faster, and more capable. But she did not work alone. Slowly, she began to train a small group of humans who had witnessed the previous battle. They learned to coordinate with the tool, to think strategically, and to move with precision under her guidance. The once timid colony members now practiced drills, learning not just to fight, but to think ahead, to anticipate, to adapt. Ilara watched them with pride. They were learning that intelligence and courage together were far more powerful than fear or strength alone. Then, one morning, alarms sounded across the colony. The distant hum of engines grew louder, echoing through the cliffs and metal spires. It was not a small force this time. Xylar ships, dozens in number, darkened the skies above Aurora Prime. The humans braced themselves, but fear ran through their veins. This was no longer a small incursion, it was an invasion. Ilara moved quickly, grabbing the tool and guiding it toward the colony square. Its segments extended automatically, reacting to her commands and the immediate threats around her. She called out instructions to the colonists, directing them to positions where they could defend themselves and assist the tool. The humans, now trained and focused, moved with confidence, a stark contrast to the fear of the first encounter. The Xylars descended in waves, their weapons glowing and their movements precise. But the humans were ready. Ilara activated the tool fully, and it responded as if alive, extending long, flexible appendages that created protective shields, deflected energy blasts, and stabilized buildings under attack. The colonists followed its guidance, working as one coordinated unit, each action calculated and purposeful. The first group of Xylar warriors landed in the open field. They were massive, clad in advanced biomechanical armor, and carried weapons designed to tear through metal. The tool moved with fluid precision, intercepting attacks, redirecting energy, and using the warriors' own momentum against them. Each segment of the Warlord's spine worked in harmony with Ilara's commands, creating a system of defense that the Xylars could not anticipate. Colonists who had once cowered now fought alongside the tool, using improvised weapons, traps, and the terrain to their advantage. Ilara guided them, teaching them to anticipate enemy movements and to trust the tool's instincts. Together, human and machine became a single, coordinated force, proving that ingenuity, not brute strength, could overcome even the deadliest opponents. The battle intensified as Xylar mechs advanced toward the colony's center. They were towering machines, armed with devastating energy weapons. But the tool adapted instantly. It extended multiple segments to block attacks, using energy pulses to disrupt their systems, while simultaneously guiding colonists to safety. Sparks and flashes illuminated the battlefield. But Ilara's focus never wavered. Every movement was precise, every action calculated to protect lives while neutralizing threats. One particularly large mech attempted to crush a section of the colony. The tool extended, wrapping its segments around the machine's legs and using the Warlord's spine to analyze its movements. With careful adjustments, it caused the mech to stumble, tipping it backward and forcing it to retreat. The colonists cheered, their morale rising with each successful defense. Elara realized that the key to victory was not destroying the Xylars entirely but outthinking them. The Empire relied on fear and overwhelming power. Humanity relied on strategy, adaptability, and cooperation. She coordinated the tool to manipulate energy fields, creating barriers and diversions that forced the Xylars into positions where their weapons were less effective. Each human action, each tool movement, worked together in perfect harmony. The tide of the battle began to turn. The Xylars, confident in their superiority, now faced humans who could anticipate their moves, counter their attacks, and adapt instantly. Their initial aggression faltered as they struggled to overcome a force they could not predict. The colonists, inspired by Elara and her invention, fought with courage and intelligence, showing that even against a technologically superior foe, humans could prevail. In the midst of the battle, a massive Xylar command ship hovered above the colony. It emitted a pulse designed to disable human technology. Elara acted swiftly. She instructed the tool to absorb and redirect the energy, transforming the disabling pulse into a protective shield for the colony. The maneuver worked flawlessly, demonstrating not just the tool's capability but the human ability to adapt under pressure. As the Xylar forces began to retreat, the colonists cheered, their voices rising in unison. Aurora Prime had survived. Humans had faced an overwhelming enemy and emerged victorious. Not through brute force, but through intelligence, coordination, and courage. The tool, once mocked as useless, had become the symbol of humanity's potential. A tangible reminder that mind and ingenuity could rival even the most advanced technology. After the battle, Elara walked among the colonists, checking on them, ensuring that everyone was safe. The tool retracted its segments, humming softly, as if content with its work. People who had once doubted her innovation now looked at her with respect, admiration, and gratitude. They understood that humanity's strength was not just in numbers or weapons, but in the ability to think, adapt, and act with courage. Elara returned to her workshop, exhausted but triumphant. She studied the tool, analyzing every movement, every response, and every improvement. She knew the Xylars would return, and that future encounters would be even more dangerous. But she also knew that humanity had proven its value, its intelligence, and its ability to survive against impossible odds. She reflected on the journey that had brought them here, from being mocked as a quiet engineer with useless tools to leading a colony in a battle against a superior force. The tool, powered by the Warlord's spine, had not just defended them. It had inspired courage, unity, and belief in human potential. Over the following days, the colony repaired the damage, rebuilt structures, and trained more residents to work alongside the tool. Elara taught them not only how to use the device but how to think strategically, how to anticipate threats, and how to act with confidence and intelligence. The colony became stronger, more resilient, and more united than ever before. Elara knew that this was only the beginning. The Xylar Empire would continue to challenge them. But now humanity had a new weapon. Not one of destruction, but one of creativity, adaptability, and ingenuity. The tool was a reminder that humans could take even the most formidable challenges and turn them into opportunities for growth and victory. As she looked out over Aurora Prime, the colony bathed in the soft light of the twin moons, she felt a sense of pride and hope. Humanity had faced fear and danger and had emerged stronger. The tool, her invention, and the courage of her people had proven that the true power of humans lay in their minds, their hearts, and their determination. Elara smiled, knowing that the legacy of the tool would endure. It would be a symbol for generations, showing that even the most underestimated individuals could achieve greatness. It would remind humanity that intelligence, courage, and unity could overcome the most powerful enemies. And somewhere far away, the Xylar Empire would take note. They had learned, as humans always hoped they would, that underestimating humanity was a grave mistake. For Aurora, Prime was no longer just a colony. It was a beacon of human ingenuity, resilience, and hope, shining brightly in a galaxy that often tried to extinguish it. Ilara returned to her workshop one last time that night, placing the tool on its stand and watching it hum softly. She allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection, knowing that the battles to come would be challenging, but confident that humanity, with intelligence, courage, and creativity, could face any threat. And with that thought, she turned to her workbench, ready to dream, invent, and prepare for the future. The humans of Aurora Prime had survived, learned, and thrived. They had proven that no matter how small, fragile, or underestimated they might seem, human ingenuity and determination could change the course of history. The story of the useless tool had become the story of a people who would not be defeated, a people who would rise to challenges, and a people whose greatest strength was not in their weapons, but in their minds, hearts, and courage. And in the quiet hum of her workshop, with the tool glowing faintly, Ilara smiled. Humanity was ready.